So this is IBM Museum with a very impromptu live stream, and I'm at 586 subscribers, 586, and I'm just going through and editing. Live stream, okay. And this is just a very quick live stream on a whim. I had a subscriber say that I should do a 586 special, and at that point I was just a few shy of that number. Now that I did hit it, I wanted to go through and commemorate that. So let's get this. And of course, Facebook is down. So, in fact, I'll erase the next and say Saturday, because on Saturday I will be at VCF East. That's October the 9th, and that's in Wall, New Jersey. For those that are close to that area, might be a chance to still get tickets and attend. If you see me there, just say hi. I'm going through, I've got a couple packages that are going out today. I've already got the one for Curious Mark boxed up. I've got the addresses on the other side of that. And that's another so-called Bermuda planer. And for the Mall 77 that they had that had a bad planer. I already sent a good planer and CPU that's working fine. Curious Mark will go through and address whatever they can. They're looking to set up with that IBM channel adapter at the appropriate point. But they did try and go through and troubleshoot the planer that came out there, and they've narrowed it down to a chip, and they have the tools, the technique, the knowledge to go through and replace the surface mount chips on the board. So I'm sending out a Bermuda board that I've happened to salvage the SCSI microcode from, and it turned out bad. I didn't get that off the board like I really wanted to. It pulled up some traces, and I mean, it probably would be fixable, but that is my I had 4 spare Bermuda planers at the time, and that was just what I picked for salvaging. And there's a chance to salvage some more chips, and it's even where the pins on that particular chip are bent. In fact, I can go through and I've got a picture of that. I should have had all this queued up beforehand, but like I say, this is very impromptu live stream, and get to the point where okay, and I guess I can show it beforehand before I change the web browser capture. As I say, I'll be at Vintage Computer Festival East. I was taking it as the forum. I mean, you hear, of course, the Vintage Computer Forum. You hear the Vintage Computer Federation. I'm typically on the forum side, but I guess it's festival here. Vintage Computer Festival East. this is the last one of the year for these. They had the other two in Dallas and in the Chicago area, and so go through and find that online if you're interested. I've got the link. I can probably, as I go through and change the link. Let me see what I can do to go through and just juggling some pages here. Okay, so let's copy that out, and I'll list that in the, too many windows open here. I'll list that in the chat. That's the address. The IBM cheese wheel cutter, and I saw that. And featured on I think it's on the mainframe group, IBM mainframe and mini computer group on Facebook. By the way, Facebook is down. Facebook's in now a few hours. Just as they got some bad press today, and that's dropped out. I had to post, and thankfully I've got that text save away. And Derek is asking if I have the cheese wheel cutter, and I responded in chat that I've got a cordless phone that's branded for IBM, and IBM actually that's the cheese wheel cutter, and it has there's a circular platform, and it has a blade that you can bring down, and that's for those big, Wisconsin sized cheese, and the wheels of cheese, and I mean, that's old school IBM. That's back when they were, you could go through and you could select the angle that you're wanting to cut off of that cheese wheel, and calibrated to that sense of how much cheese you're getting. I mean, that was the industry standard at that time. Where you could go through them being very accurate how they cut the cheese wheel to what the selling price was. I'm going to go through and let me see if I can get switched to that image of that planer I'm sending to Curious Mark. I'll talk about the other aspect that I'm doing here. Okay, and let's see how that displays. Okay, so this is the planer that I'm sending to Curious Mark. There's probably not, I don't know if I have a way to go through. When I click on these images normally, as I host them on my site, and of course I have the ruler up at the top. Good. It went through and enlarged. We're over by the 486 plastic quad flat pack mount. That's actually a 46 33 megahertz CPU that's underneath that gold heatsink. There's not any the way I'm doing it through OBS, there's not going to be any where I can zoom in and out, so to speak. It's either blown up big or a page view. But this is the chip, and you can see over there on that left-hand edge up by that 23 marker. And I don't know what that is. I see that those tape markers, and that's probably for 23. That's probably the manufacturing plant is what my guess would be. I'm trying to think of all the other variations I've seen as well, to the different other codes, and 23 being, of course, one of the big production plants for IBM. but you can see that that chip is dinged over on the left-hand edge as it shows here. And that is, I mean, you can even count the pins there in the in that lower right quadrant of the chip, and it's upside down. It has a 200. It's a 200 pin chip, so it should be 50 pins on every side. No, excuse me, that'd be actually the 200 mark is just shy, effectively, because it's 52 pins per side, as you can see from that right side, as displayed here, of the chip, of that U42 chip. And so it'd be 208. I guess I can't read correctly upside down. Is 208 for that in that lower quadrant as it's displayed here upside down. But Curious Mark and Tube Time US is helping him with that. They have the ability to go through there and to remove to desolder these chips from the board. They can no better people than to straighten those pins, because otherwise I'd have to figure out how I'd correct that pins if I had gone through and used the planer. That may have been even part of my selection for choosing that planer to salvage from. I noticed it was damaged in other ways, and I just thought, what the hey, I've got to come up with a planer that can salvage that SCSI microcode, and that's actually on the Bermuda and the 9585 excuse me, the X, the 9585 X server, which is resembles the Bermuda layout, so to speak, for that tower. That SCSI microcode is shared between those boards, and it's easier for me to find a spare Bermuda board than it is for the those 9585X. I've got one running model of those, and even with the info panel running, and then I've got a spare planer for one of those. So that's a little bit more critical of planer, a little bit harder to find than these more common Bermuda planers out there. So they'll be able to extract this chip off the board and straighten out those pins. So I'm sure that they'll do a fabulous job with that. And there might be some more stuff that we end up salvaging from that. I've got to go through, and this is actually wonderful for being zoomed in. I've got to figure out if that Dallas, and that's the real-time clock, and that's actually Y2K corrected for that part number on the as shown on the planer, the DS1285Q for being that surface mount package. And then to the right of that Sony chip, Sony Japan, that's actually the microchannel extended CMOS storage. Normally that would be I believe that's 20 that's 2 KB, 2 kilobytes of 2048 bytes of extended CMOS storage that just particular areas are used within those that storage area for the microchannel configuration, including the microchannel adapters installed in the system, whereas the Dallas chip keeps track of the kind of the bigger configuration issues on the board, in addition to being a real-time clock. And that's what we mean by saying the RTC, a real-time clock. I've got a Bermuda Mul 76, and I'm aware of another Model 77 Bermuda planer that it's going through, and just you have to run the configuration over and over again. It never has the same stick, and it seems to be the same thing on both systems. I had gone through and kind of was dealing to get a planer out to someone before we kind of really knew that issue was duplicated on the model that I had. And I encountered that in testing. Actually, the planer I was looking to send to him, it showed the same thing. And so I thought, well, I can't do that. And so we're going to try and pin down that. And maybe Curious Mark and Two-Time US will be a little bit of assistance for that, to where we can figure out if that is a fault that's happening that kind of has a commonality between two systems that could also show up in other places, or whether that's something unique to those systems or something. And it's with known good batteries. The battery is on the riser card, be it a 3-slot high riser for the Model 76, and in that so-called space saver case, and 5 microchannel slots high for the Model 77, and the so-called 5x5 or desktop model for that for the PS2 series. So or the later PS2 series as they had. Now and I can probably go through. Let's close down the interaction. Well, I guess I could go through. Let me take that back to actual size. But that's the planer that's actually in that big box back there. Let me get talking a little bit about that. So, and then this is my getting ready. This is the these are the business cards that I plan for VCF East. Of course, this is regular paper. I plan to print these on cardstock paper and go through and cut them. I won't even use my Cricut maker for cutting these out. My mom has an actual cutter for business cards. It'll be good. I could go through and, I mean, if it were something that would hold up for the business card, I could go through and cut it on the Cricut maker to even cut out like that IBM, as I've done. But this does pretty good for the blue toner. Actually, the blue toner does even better than the when it's grayscale to print on the paper. And I'll just take, you know, I don't know how many people I'll run into. I might even print a couple hundred of those things. It's 10 per sheet. I went through and got that set. The maybe a little bit more of a view for the camcorder. What's that to do with the camera leg and everything else here? But those are the business cards. I'm going through and setting up that links site right now. And that's actually for the business cards. I mean, rather than list my phone number and mailing address and everything else, I'll just have, you know, the links page and a contact information to go through and inquire further about my my address and a contact number and contact email address, just to have a little bit of a lid, so to speak, on that. I wouldn't go through and broadcast that everywhere in the world on the web, so to speak. But going through and as I say, if you see me on Saturday for the VCF, the Vintage Computer Festival, on that Saturday, October the 9th, be sure and say hi. And of course, it runs. They have some events that are happening. I think Friday, later on Friday, and then on the Sunday, and they even have classes and stuff like that. They've got like PSU repair and stuff like that. That they're presentations that they're gonna look at. But I'll be looking through the exhibits and hanging with Retro Tech Chris to go through on that meet. And so as I say, the big box is for the in fact, we need to get Let me go through and power that on. And I even have one of those 3 power cable Hydras that's got 3 connections, that those C13 power connections for computers plugged in. This is my maxed out Mall 30 that's behind me, and it is a it's of course originally based on the 8086, and it's actually now got a V30 in there at 8 megahertz. Get behind there so my ClearClick VGA capture can go through and do all that. But I mean, for a Mall 30, pretty well equipped. Of course, I have the front off, and I've got the regular 1.44 megabyte. These are the drives that the Mall 30 will take, and it's a 40-pin edge connector on the back. And of course, it's on a sled here, and you get to see, if the big blue button is unlabeled, it's a 720 KB, and that's what the machine came with stock. And you can swap in these 1.44 megabyte drives. I mean, some of these, of course, now in this day and age are not working, but this is a Sony branded drive ultimately. Get to the side, production dates and everything else for that. It's a Sony branded drive. If I can get the autofocus to work real good. And the Mall 30, in addition to the Mall 25 that was derived from with that all-in-one unit, is unique that they go through. There's not any settings and any jumpers on the planer. And I wish I had a riser around. I've got those tucked off elsewhere. That it goes through, and they auto configure for every boot. They go through and they inquire to the equipment that's connected, including for the diskette drive, the hard drive, and it has actually a register on the planer that goes through and enables or disables the planar functions. Parallel port, serial port, even the modes of those like the parallel port, extended mode. And so you can go through. This actually doesn't have it has the MCGA on the planer, of course, but I've got an IBM 8-bit VGA adapter that's on there, and that's the only VGA adapter that IBM made for things like the Mall 30 and the IBM AT and the XT, XT286 that they had previous, that you could have VGA with the IBM name, and of course there was lots of aftermarket VGA that came later on. But I'm going to go through and I'm analyzing those VGA chips as well from IBM. Move my little box, which I'll talk about, and but you can see it back there with the solar chip, and it's a really narrow card, and it's the only time, well, that there's a so-called feature connector on that as well. I can probably move down the box for. Let's go into Curious Mark, and let's see if I can get it's under that brace. For the trouble with my tripod here. It's underneath that silver brace, so you can't really see a whole bunch of it. I mean, there's that feature connector in the back. And being this adapter here. And so I'll get pictures of it too. And the silver chip is actually effectively the VGA chip of that board. And then below that, I've got the this is the 4869 -001 adapter. That's for the external 360 KB diskette drive. I will be going through and trying to archive some diskettes, the 5 1/4 360 KB diskettes after this as well. And that's why I have that connected. I've got my external CD-ROM, which is on the transfer SCSI card that's below that. And so this MAL 30, for even being originally based on an 8086 CPU at 8 megahertz, has the full capabilities of reading a CD-ROM drive. And it's got a 1 gigabyte hard drive on this MAL. That's why I've got it maxed, so-called maxed out. Now what I'm doing here, and I have just a diskette, and this is a 720 KB because it has no window on the other side, double-sided, double density. And I'm going through and I've swapped out the 1.44 megabyte drive, and I've put in a 720 KB, and I have a box of these things. I've already tested one drive, and just to see if it would go through and work for me, and it didn't. And so I temporarily swapped the 1.44 megabyte drive back in. And you always want to go through, and you want to, of course, have a known good test. I want to make sure that the diskette was good to read it in that 1.44 megabyte drive. And then before I swapped in another 720 KB, and I haven't tested this one, and I've already copied the contents of the diskette too. And I'm just going to do, I can work through it accordingly if I have other. Okay, so this one is going to show as bad as well. And I go through, and I mean, I could try and, there's not really any danger of electrical shorts going through and swapping these diskette drives. I mean, it's got a keyway and everything else. But just for best practices, you know, I'm not going to go through and just really temp fade or anything like that. Here's another one. Hopefully among this box of all the stuff I have, there will be, and I guess it would help if I get back to the and I just did a directory listing from the hard drive. To do initial read. I mean, and it's more complex. You want to make sure, you know, even in instances that maybe it could even boot from the diskette, which is probably a later test I'll do before I pick out which drive I'm going to send. Okay, and let's just do a drive A again. Boy, we are 3 for 0 right now. And as I say, the MAL 30 goes through and configures automatically when it boots up. There's no when you go through between the and that was I had one that's bagged. You know, you can, and you can, if I had a webcam view, you could go through and see that, the buttons are unmarked. Why is this having such a... Oh, I've got screws on the outside. And this is a different model of 720 kb. But I'm just going through, and eventually I'll have a diskette that shows up as good. And I've seen, and there's some other comments. I'm getting thumbs ups. I'm getting hearts. Sounds good. Getting eyeballs. And Derek's made a few comments, but I just flipped back to the other window. Ooh. And this, yeah, and I'm not going to force it. This diskette drive, something binds up, and I'm not going to force that. I'll have to look at that internally and figure out what that exactly that is. But just going through for the live stream, and I still have drives. Okay, woohoo! Let me flip to the foreground. So at least I've got the Post-it note on that one, and I think I was from the box is going for one side, and that's for the bad ones. I'll probably find all the good ones on the other side of the box with these Post-it notes. So slightly more than a year ago, that this one did test good, and this is a different, that might even be a the one that they have in the PC convertible has 720 kb diskettes as well. So maybe that one will work. And go through. Let me see what the next one in the box has. Because that's, yeah, those are showing up. Those are marked same date. Tested good, tested good, tested good on that side. I should have gone through on that side since. Okay, and likely this will still show up as good. And I'm going to test this last one too, because I'm gonna do the one that looks like it came out of the Mol 30, just because those other two I have might be and there we go for the 5250 emulation, the AST boards. That test is good. Let me go through and quickly. Of course, these in the time frame of them being there, guess I have one known good for that one. Let's go through and. This is actually, I've got it pinned in. I don't even have a Post-it note. I went through and pinned it in. Get that in the bay. And And the 360 KB diskettes that I have to read are those 5 1/4 diskettes are also. I'll probably just go through and read it to the hard drive. I've got a whole bunch of hard drive space for that gigabyte SCSI hard drive on there, and then I'll ultimately have them on. I can put that Sony drive back on and even have a 1.44 and even have the contents of about 4 of the 360 KB diskettes. Oh, so that one, despite being marked that way, is not good now. And I'll have to look at how long the stream's been going. I planned just a brief put those ones down there. Another one that's I've got a marking on it. Pinned in. And I'll go through and on this one I'll go through and okay. Say I want to go through and I want to look to see if I have I can make a boot disk easily enough. So that's a good drive. That's the one that's going. If it long as I can get a boot diskette and see if it'll boot from that. Of course, it won't run the CD drivers or anything like that. The SCSI adapter, the little transfer SCSI adapter, has a BIOS on there, so it'll be able to boot from, or the hard drive will be recognized at least if I go through and boot from that too. We're doing good for having the drive selected. All the other tests, and once I go through and work with the files I need, I'll get these packages mailed out today to Curious Mark and this other diskette drive that's going elsewhere. Facebook comes back up. I can tell the person and give them the tracking numbers. I've got, at least I had his address that emailed me to me when he sent it to me via Messenger, so I know where it's. I can address it without being back up. And who knows, hopefully I've even gained some more subscribers in this time. Looks like I'm just shy of 40 minutes going through for the live stream here, and getting notices, little chimes going on about people leaving comments about the first year anniversary, and 586 subscribers in a year getting started is not bad numbers. That's been helped out by Curious Mark giving me a shout out, giving a link to my channel back when I sent him the planer a few months back, the replacement planer, and I saw a big jump from that, probably you know, a good 250 subscribers. I mean, it would have been effectively half of the subscribers I've gone through is that link that Curious Mark offered. Other people just had to find me in that YouTube algorithm. You know, it's hard for people to get a start, so to speak, and building up a subscriber base takes time. And that's just the way it is. And so I was glad for all that of those jumps in, and whatever I can do to help out channels that you know, boost their subscribers and get a little bit more recognition. I've done that in the past to link those in and promote those. I've had my own cheerleaders in that, you know, who I'm going with on the on that Vintage Computer Festival East. Retrotech Chris has always been a big cheerleader for my channel. I've undoubtedly gained a lot of subscribers that way through him as well. So those people always have my thanks for bringing up the awareness of my channel, as I've tried to do for others as well. I've got to dig through for the diskettes. I've got what the hey. Let's go through. I do have my diskettes handy. I can probably work with my the leash of my microphone, and a lot of the diskettes I have here. Let's go through and let's see. Let's even see if we can read. Okay. And this is, I don't know if that's scores or some from bowling. And SC listing my hometown. But I'm going to go through, I don't really have any interest in these files from 1991 and 1988. And I should be able, it should recognize the 720 KB existing format, okay, and proceed with format, yes. Oh, parameters, and so I've got to do it's so new of DOS, it's probably yeah, 6.22. But we're going to go through, we probably have to add a switch on there that it knows. Okay. So probably we're going to do the F. Go format A / F colon 720 / S, because we want to do the system files. And let's do a /U unconditional. We don't need it doing that unformat information or anything else like that. Formatting 720K, much better. It should format this just twice as fast as the 1.44 if I had that drive on there. And I'll probably use some of these diskettes for archiving. I can read those in my XP tweener system I still have over here on the left-hand side of the view you're seeing. And I'll go through, and those 360 KB diskettes, I'll go through. Of course, this is the one I want to archive for that 3 1/4 720 KB. Look through. Yeah, I have, and I went through, and this had a 3.5 inch diskette down at the bottom that had both of the 5 1/4 diskettes that are up above here archived on, or the same files on that 3.5 inch, and so that's why I used to archive for that one. But I know there's some others that I don't, that are yeah, these for the AST. Well, and I might have those on, this might be on that 720 KB, so I might not need my 4869001 external drive to archive these. I thought I had, there's some diskettes I think around here somewhere that I think I knew I had to go through an archive, but I can look for those a little bit more. And we're going to go to 11 characters. I will do 720 KB. Boot. Okay. And do no. Just to take a look, and the two are probably hidden files. Wow, it sure. Oh, I did. Hopefully this doesn't. Did a directory of the hard drive. I'm just going to do a Control-Delete. You can see the BIOS, thanks to that EEPROM, that ROM extension, it does recognize the CD drive and the hard drive, although in BIOS it doesn't have the drivers that's loaded for the CD-ROM. And so, I mean, you can do a directory listing of the drive. You could read files. You still want to write, and since it doesn't have an autoexec.bat, and most amazingly for that, the time is pretty close. Okay. So going through, you but you want to write files, and especially having a boot diskette where you're writing that boot image to the diskette as a way to go through and fully test it in the drive. And there's two I think it's AH. Okay, yeah, that shows the hidden files. So those, that IOSys and MS-DOS sys, even the double space bin is hidden since it's a 6.22 DOS version. It's got that double or drive space. I Microsoft got in trouble remember that for the double space and the drive space in the 6.20, 6.21, 6.22 time frame. I really didn't have to have that drive space bin on there. I'm not interested in doubling or storing more on these diskettes. I'm just wanting a boot diskette to test this. But so this is the drive that's going to go get shipped, and so that's good. It's able to boot from it and everything. I'll get that cleaned up a little bit, the dust and things like that, but I won't really go real intense. I'm sure where that's ending up, and he had gone through and tried to clean the diskette and actually ended up where there's a spring, the head retention spring was damaged, and so I know he'll appreciate getting that drive in. Let's just look through, and we can go through. I'll take it out to being probably an hour live stream. That's good to have that drive. And I like to say I should have gone through that far side of that box, but that's what got me started going through the drives. I'll put the 1.44 megabyte drive back in there. And I could even pull the cable loose and set the drive on top or something like that for testing or whatever. I didn't necessarily have to switch it that way. And we'll get the after I get the packages out, get them down to the post office in time to go out. I'll go through and start working with the diskettes that I have. So, and this is always available in playback. I can go through and probably even title that because I didn't mark otherwise. I went through and announced at the start, and probably I didn't have any viewers, that was commemorating the 586 subscribers, and yes, Nigel, that is it's got an NEC V30. My 30. And I've even got an 8087 FPU in there. In fact, this thing, for all that, the power supply on this is probably pretty loaded down, and I am running a VGA card on there again on the top, and in that top slot. and just under this silver bar. And so this doesn't have the that cold boot error that's happening to quite a few of these now, where you power them up and you hear the power supply go, everything else, but you don't get beeps, anything else to show that the system's working. No video. And that's actually what just is a Model 30 cold boot error, that the MCGA video, it's where you don't have a VGA or any other video card installed in there. So that MCGA planar video just doesn't initialize properly. It's actually a small screen. It's like there's a power issue. I've seen it affect systems more with our heavier power draw, and it affects the earlier planers more, it seems. Trying to pin it down a little bit more, but it affects the P planar of the Model 30, which is the first one, not so much the Grenic planers that came later on that have the CPU in different position on the planer. I've got pictures of those up on my site. And then the Model 25 Type 1 planer is more affected than the Type 2 planer, the planer that came later. And there's not much variation with that. They moved the power connector, but one of the things they did, and IBM introduced, had an ECA, and that's an engineering change announcement, and it's actually ECA-023 for the Model 25, and the Model 30 does not have that same ECA, although the planers are affected the same way and changed the same way, but the MCGA gate array chip that was on the Type 1 Model 25 planer and on that P planer of the Model 30 was changed out for another chip. Apparently there's some faults or something else, and that initialization of the MCGA video may be related to that. What you do is you can't do a cold boot because it just repeats the conditions, or that's not as effective. What you try and make the system do is, if you think it's come to the end of that boot cycle, and of course if it doesn't have a boot disk, boot diskette or a hard drive in there that's functional, it's going to boot into ROM Basic anyway. But you just give it a little bit of time and do Control-Deletes when you're sure that it's through that cycle. It has to actually be effectively at an endpoint, because the system is booting up fine. Just that you can't see that on video. And so you can do Control-Delete as long as that boot cycle is complete, and that'll force what's called a warm start. And that may go through on subsequent attempts it actually puts up video. The chip has had time to get power to it and everything else. You're not going through and switching on the power supply to really rudely wake it up, so to speak. It's woke up a little bit more gently, and it can work. And as I say, the early planers are affected and the heavier power draw. So if you have like a P planer like I have here, that has an 8087 that's going to do a lot of power draw of an extra chip that's really optional, there's not going to be much stuff that's going to use that 8087. Pull the chip, and we're trying to reduce the power draw off of that power supply, and that should make it function a little bit better. It has, in my observations, to reduce the power draw. And surprisingly, you can also draw more power effectively by putting a VGA board into the Model 30, and it doesn't have that effect since it doesn't use that MCGA video on the planer. Now the Model 25 is harder. That initial version of the Model 25, based on the 8086 CPU, it's got that internal display, and there's not an easy way with a video board, unless, and I've seen some people do it. Good friend has gone through there, and he, had that cable that came out of the unit and looped it back through in the unit. I think he's reverted back to the MCGA now, but that's one way to get through all this. And as it is, the executive workstation, and we saw I think it's probably been close to a year or more now, that 8-bit guy, Dave Murray, worked with, did on YouTube, where, and he caught a lot of heat for it with other things in the video as well. But he found the so-called executive workstation at Computer Reset. They had a few side that looked like they were almost brand new in box. And that's, I think, what started the slide a little bit, is that he powered one up and he didn't get any video. And I think, and it was a hard drive, there was no hard drive on the unit, just a diskette drive. And but it would have dropped to ROM basic or something, in that instance. But he didn't get any video, and I think that started him with not necessarily being very experienced on that PS2 side, and just didn't really know, wasn't aware of that no video condition that caused him to go through deeper. And if he'd have gone through and just put in like an 8-bit VGA card on there, he could have, bypassed the video effectively, bypassed that internal display to likely get up video and to get through that. But the executive workstation, surprisingly for the low level that was, 720 KB diskettes again, and no hard drive, based on the 8086 CPU, and it had a MUL 30 planar, exactly like what I've got in there, a P planar, like I've got in this unit behind me. And but for all that, it looks like it was a prototype of the MUL 25, because it had that attached display. Even though it was you could swivel that monitor, it was not necessarily an integrated unit, whereas where the screen was a fixed position as in the case. But that does look like where it was probably a prototype, since the MUL 30 did precede the MUL 25 initially. And of course, in April of 1987, the initial PS2s that came out with that, the MUL 30 was the only non-microchannel PS2 in the initial release in April of 1987. And there was the MUL 50 that was microchannel based on 286, the desktop version. The MUL 60, which was the tower version, and the MUL 70 being 32-bit microchannel. And the Model 80, the tower version, effectively what the MUL 70 is, was just a delayed and released a little bit later from that April 1987. IBM had some things at the end, and that was actually supposed to be the planned release of OS2 as well. They wanted to release a big new software operating system, and their new systems being microchannel that did things in different ways, a little bit more, had a gain in performance to the microchannel bus, and had some different things of not saying jumpers, being, in a sense, the first start towards a plug-and-play aspect. And of course, with reference diskettes and adapter description files, ADS for the adapters, but so not true plug-and-play without any having to do anything else. But the the MUL 30 was that segment that is the only non-microchannel system that was released in that. And this is the system, as you see, all the upgrades, I've talked about all the upgrades, but this is one of the, or actually the first complete PS2 that I had, and got it for, I think, $300. I think I got the external diskette drive along with it. and of course didn't have the VGA card in there, didn't have the transfer SCSI drive, had the proprietary 20 megabyte hard drive. But I went through and expanded over time, and it's amazing for all these years later on that this machine still runs without me having to swap anything else out. You know, went through and upgrade the CPU as well, that's able to read even CD-ROM data disk, and to go through and have a 1 gigabyte hard drive on there. I could even think I could have gone to a 2 gigabyte hard drive, but what's the use? What's the use in doubling a gigabyte in size? A 1 gigabyte drive is big enough for this this sort of system. So let's look. Yeah, I'm over an hour, well enough, and I think that's a good enough time. Could probably just finish up some, if there's any questions. 8-bit VGA. And yeah, it's not token ring, although that would be the thing. And I've got all 3 slots, adapter slots filled, but it'd be nice to go through a network. And of course, the original XT or the 8-bit bus token ring was just 4 megabit, and it would be nice getting the system networked as well, but I'd have to go through and I'd have to remove some of the other adapters. Maybe the VGA would be the first to go with that. I don't know, where I'd revert back to the MCGA video, and really can't put in those 5250 emulation adapter or anything else with all the adapter slots being filled. Maybe I can span the ISA bus would be another way. Like you have that PC 110 that you did. It's got all that breadboard stuff hanging off of it. Just an amazing thing there. And yeah, and Kevin made the comment, paperclip, and I won't. I know what that's in reference to. I'm not going to be mean. I mean, I know Dave Murray caught a lot of heat for that, and he went through and explained it a little bit later. You know, his forte is in other systems, and he knows a lot about those. And it was just IBM's different engineering there that probably caused him a little bit of frustration, and other things going on with that cold boot issue. I'm not going to go through from there and talk about security bits on power supplies or anything else, or doing what to power supplies. But yeah, that was it was an interesting video, and you know, he's moved on from that. I'm not going to go through and really condemn anything from what he may have not known at the time for that. And so as far as I know, those and those executive workstations, I think there was 5 of them, maybe a little bit more, I don't know. But as far as I know, those went back to Computer Reset, and really it was of the nature where he was borrowing the unit and then worked on others in that set, or they tried turning them on at Computer Reset to see if they could get any base video or see if they could get further. And as far as I know, all those are back at Computer Reset there in Dallas, and there is a little bit of effort by IBM aficionados. I would love to have one. I'd love to be able to document that and to see if that's actually the cold boot issue that was affecting those units. And really, for rarity, I mean, it's down to those are the only ones that are known out there. It doesn't look like it was ever a released product. I mean, IBM went through and they released the so-called nursing workstation, or the that was kind of almost like a PC convertible mounted to the wall, because it did have a flat panel display. But that was a Mul 25 planer that was in it, and it's got a real-time clock on the riser board. It's actually how the Mul 25 should have been done, and that was used out there. It's rare enough, but in this day and age, but it was released out there. I don't think the executive workstation was ever released by IBM. Yeah, no, and that's fine. I mean, most of the PS2s are, when you hear PS2s, it's microchannel related chatter a lot of the time, since that was unique. And remember the hard and fast rule: if it's below the Mul 50, Mul numbers below 50, it's non-microchannel, and 50 and above is microchannel. And those will come. I mean, they're being released out there. There's even a segment that's able to hit the European market now, and just keep a lookout out there, and I'm sure that you'll pick up a microchannel model at some point. Yeah, again, Kevin, I would love to have an executive workstation and go through, just because it's at the root, it's a Mul 30, the same as what I have here on the bench. And I'm very familiar with those to go through. I have extra riser cards with the lithium battery. Those things don't go bad. They've got a good shelf life to go through, and I would love to have one to investigate and document a little bit further past. And it's a standard Mul 30 and Mul 30 BIOS that was on there. But even figuring out the BIOS version of whether that was that initial release, because IBM has they had 4 release versions of BIOS for the Mul 30, and the Mul 25 had 1 that was released. And there's a rumor of a second BIOS for the initial Mul 25, based on the 8086 CPU. And I've gone through and I've documented that Mul 30 BIOS. I have it listed. I've got those BIOS ROMs imaged online. So it's easy to go through and upgrade them. I mean, the last Mul 30 BIOS, and that's typically from the Grenic planer, the later planer of the Mul 30. It's able to run the proprietary 45 megabyte drive. That's a very rare hard drive as well. That came on the last Model 30 286s that were out there. So it is uncommon. The one I have has stiction problems where I have to go through and to kind of do the wrist flick to see if I can get the platters loose, and go through and power it down, power it up. And I'm going through the issues where the motor of that drive is dying. The platters still look good, and who knows what I'll have to go through and to keep that working. But that last BIOS for the Mul 30, the 86 base version, does make it able to run those 45 megabyte hard drives, proprietary drives. And of course, after so many years, we're getting on the point of 35 years almost, or even over 30 years for those hard drives. It's to where those, if those have been used, they've failed. And so even there, some of the operational ones, I kind of may just set those aside and with notes on how they are, and come up with other alternatives of solid state media to go through and be boot from, or as I did in this instance, that Trantor T130B SCSI adapter that's in there to boot the 1 gigabyte hard drive and also run that external CD-ROM drive, and that's been the boot solution for me on this Model 30. And yeah, IBM Industrial Machines from Japan, and I've gone through for the industrial systems that I have, and it's even interesting for the 7561 and 7562. And what it is, a 7561 is an IBM industrial system that's a 7500 series. The 7561 is the desktop version. The 7562 is the rack mount version. And they're industrial systems based on what some people think is the Model 70 Type 2 planar, but it's actually and that's a short planar, but it's actually based on a Japanese derivative of the Model 70 Type 2 planar. And it's got two auxiliary video extension slots on that model. And Alfred Arnold in Germany has one. And I think he's got the desktop. He's got the 7561. A lot of the industrials I have as well, they're the desktop model, not the rack mount model. And but that has links to where it is that planar that's in the 7561 and 7562 is also used in a Japanese PS/55. And of course, the PS 55s are the equivalent of the for the Japanese market of the PS2s. Although the many different models, they share some in rare instances, some cases. Sometimes the technology are planars in very rare instances, but wholly different product to support that Japanese market. And yeah, they're a little bit unique in this case, especially they don't make it very far out of Japan, and it's well, thank you. And I love to get more and more subscribers. I don't know if it's he's already subscribed or not. I got notification today, just right before I went live, of that 586 subscribers. That's kind of what reminded me to do a impromptu live stream. And I would hope through this that I'm going to get more subscribers. I'm going to go through, we've confirmed the diskette drives work. I've got to go through and, because the post office is closing in just about an hour. And so I've got to get in line, and I've actually got to put some clear tape and get this drive packaged up, a little bit cleaned up and everything else to put in the package and get this stuff shipped out, because that's the last truck out today. They've already had the earlier truck leave, and I need to get the stuff on the way to them, and I can then get further prepared for my trip to the VCF East, being there on Saturday, October 9th. And look forward to seeing the people that are in that area or going there as well. I'm going to wrap up the live stream at this point. We've gone, it's getting close to an hour and 20 minutes. I was not even intended 20 minutes when I started this, just as a way to go through, and seeing that I had 586 subscribers. Thank you all for watching. Click on if you enjoy the video, click on that like button, and encourage those subscribers to my channel, because I want more. I want to hit 1,000 subscribers at least, and so I can start making YouTube announcements and going through and having a little bit more where I can make those announcements as a little bit of a forerunner to the videos that are coming out. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Bye.